Hey, do you remember that old question that people used to ask years ago? It was on bracelets, WWJD. What would Jesus do? Sometimes people would have it on a hat, WWJD. I think that's a good question. The question was simply, what would Jesus do in this situation? So if you're faced with a situation, you don't know what to do, you go, what would Jesus do? And then you respond according to what you believe Jesus would do in that situation. Good question. But I want to ask a different question today. And the question is, what did Jesus do? And what I mean by that is, I want to imitate Christ, right, in my life. You as a believer should want to imitate Jesus. You want our actions, our thoughts, our daily activities to be like those of Jesus. We should become more like Christ as time goes on. According to Romans 8:29, God is transforming us into the image of his Son. And it comes from this verse that I was reading this week in John chapter 5. Jesus said, "Very truly I tell you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can only do what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does." Now, we know, according to Scripture, and we know just because of our lives, that no one's ever seen God, right? Jesus has, but no one else. And we also know that Jesus is the image of the invisible God, according to the Hebrew writer. And Jesus himself said, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father," right? He said that in John 14. And so, if we're wondering how to live as Christians, if we're wondering how our daily lives should go, then we should ask the question, well, what did Jesus do? What did his life look like? What was the example that he laid out for us look like? What does that look like? And I think you can see two different relationships, his relationship with his Father, but also his relationship with people. Now, when you look at his relationship with his Father, it's a beautiful, very intimate relationship, and it's built on constant conversation, constant contact with God. And those conversations would often happen for Jesus very early in the morning. I love Mark 1:35, which says, "Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, he left the house where he was staying, and went off to a lonely place where he prayed." Everybody else is asleep. It's the stillness of the morning. There's nothing going on around him. The busyness of the day has not begun. His ministry has not started for the day. But he goes and he fills up on his relationship with his Father in heaven. Now, what I love about that is when you read the verses before that, you see that late into the evening, Jesus was busy doing ministry, but he still made time to get up early in the morning to spend that time with God. And so my question to you and to me is, how's your prayer life so far this year? Is prayer a priority for you? Because if it's going to be a priority, you're probably going to have to get up early and pray. I talk to people all the time who say, "I'm just so busy. I just don't seem to make time for prayer." And that's the thing. You've got to make time for prayer. And one of the ways you do that is you set the alarm a little earlier, you get up a little earlier, get your coffee, get away, get alone with God, and talk to him intimately in prayer, so that your day starts on the right trajectory, so your heart is set on the right focus, so that that relationship that should be more important to you than anything else begins as the day starts, and you say, "God, you're the most important person. I want to honor you above everybody else, so I want to talk to you at the very start of my day. I want to talk to you before I talk to anybody else." But you also see Jesus spending time, in fact, all night in prayer with God when he knew he was going to make a big decision, like selecting the disciples. And so that should model for us long, intimate times of prayer with God when we have a big decision to make, seeking God's will, asking him to direct our lives, asking him to speak to us, to show us the direction he wants us to take. I love that example from Jesus where he spent all night in prayer. Now, you may not spend all night in prayer, but hopefully you're spending days or hours in prayer when you're trying to make a big decision. You're not trying to make that decision on your own. You want God to lead you through that decision. I'll give you one more thing that I really love about the way Jesus talks to his Father, is that Jesus gives thanks to his Father repeatedly in Scripture. Even when you're reading John chapter 6, the very next chapter over, and Jesus feeds the 5,000, what does he do? He gives thanks to God for the bread and the fish that has been provided by this little boy, and then he multiplies it. And I love that because our hearts should be focused on giving God thanks every day for what we have, for his provision, for his protection, for all the things that he does for us. And so as you think about what did Jesus do and how you want to live your life and what you want 2023 to look like, I encourage you to kind of begin with this relationship with God. Remember that you should spend some intimate time with prayer and God every single day, preferably at the beginning of the day in the morning. Sacrifice some sleep to spend time with God. That's what Jesus did, right? Talk to God when you have huge decisions to make. Make sure that you're asking for Him to lead and guide you in those areas. And finally, be very thankful to the Lord for everything that He's doing in your life and all around you all the time. I think if you start with that in mind, then you can go, hey, I can only do what Jesus did. I can only do what I see Jesus doing in Scripture, and that's how I want to live my life. I hope this is a good start to your year, this little reminder. I'll follow up on it a little bit next week, and I hope that so far 2023 is going well for you. If this has been helpful to you and you want to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe down below, and I'll see you again next week. Keep walking with Jesus, and I'll do the same.